Hi, everyone.
Greetings. We're doing 1 Corinthians chapter 2, this time starting from verse 6. Paul has emphatically been making the point that he preaches, and by extension that we, the church, should preach Christ and Him crucified. Now he shifts the attention from the Lord of glory, a title used only here of Christ, to the work of the Holy Spirit. We made the point last time that the whole book of Corinthians is framed around Christ, and specifically the death of Christ in chapter 1 and the resurrection of Christ in chapter 16. So there you see the gospel as the structure of the book itself. And now you've got the inclusion of the Spirit into why the church does not need a governing body or an organization to have the mind of Christ. That's going to come out in this section. He says, and this is the ESV, by the way, and then we'll read it in the New World Translation. Yet among the matters, let me start again. Yet among the mature, we do impart wisdom, although it is not a wisdom of this age, or of the rulers of this age, who are doomed to pass away. But we impart a secret and hidden wisdom of God, which God decreed before the ages for our glory. None of the rulers of this age understood this, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. Now, emphasis again upon the fact that the world, and even the smartest people in the world, or the ruling people of the world, could not figure this out. It took a revelation of God. But as it is written, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man imagined, what God has prepared for those who love Him. So again, God has to reveal it. You can't work it out yourself. These things God has revealed to us, and us here is Christians, not just the leaders. God has revealed these things to us through the Spirit, for the Spirit searches everything, even the depths of God. For who knows a person's thoughts except the spirit of that person, which is in him? So also no one comprehends the thoughts of God except the Spirit of God. Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, that we might understand the things freely given us by God. Notice God gives them to you. There's no human mediation here. We impart this in words not taught by human wisdom, but taught by the Spirit, interpreting spiritual truths to those who are spiritual. The natural person does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him, and he's not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned. The spiritual person judges all things, but is himself not to be judged by anyone. For who has understood the mind of the Lord, so as to instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. Now this verse has been significantly changed by the Watchtower. So let's read the whole section again in the New World Translation.
So it's chapter 2, verse 6 to the end. Now we speak wisdom among those who are mature, but not the wisdom of this system of things, nor that of the rulers of this system of things, who are to come to nothing. But we speak God's wisdom in a sacred secret, the hidden wisdom which God foreordained before the systems of things for our glory. It is this wisdom that none of the rulers of this system of things came to know, for if they had known it, they would not have executed the glorious Lord. But just as it is written, eye has not seen and ear has not heard, nor have there been conceived in the heart of man the things that God has prepared for those who love Him. For it is to us God has revealed them through His Spirit. For the Spirit searches into all things, even the deep things of God. For who among men knows the things of a man except the man's spirit within him? So too, no one has come to know the things of God except the Spirit of God. Now we received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit that is from God, so that we might know the things that have been kindly given to us by God. These things we also speak, not with words taught by human wisdom, but with those taught by the Spirit, as we explain spiritual matters with spiritual words. But a physical man does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness to him, and he cannot get to know them, because they are examined spiritually. However, the spiritual man examines all things, but he himself is not examined by any man. For who has come to know the mind of Jehovah, so that he may instruct him? But we do have the mind of Christ.
Well, first thing we have to note is, just as the first chapter ends with an insertion of the tetragrammaton, the one who boasts, let him boast in Jehovah, whereas it's Lord in the Greek, and it was Lord here in the Greek, but they've substituted the tetragrammaton in, and that obscures the fact that Lord elsewhere is Jesus Christ. In fact, in the very verse that they've changed, verse 16, we have the mind of Christ is the last thought.
So why even say that if you're talking about Jehovah, the mind of Jehovah?
So mind of Jehovah in the first sentence, mind of Christ in the second. They get away with it there, though. They couldn't get away with it in verse 8, could they?
No, because it says executed, the glorious Lord. So they know that has to be Jesus.
So Lord in verse 8 clearly has to be Jesus, and they've left it alone. But they have not left this alone, and it does muddy up the whole point that Paul is making here, which has to do with the fact that God does not need us to explain him. In fact, we can't reason our way to God. We can't reason our way to truth. We have to get it by revelation. And how does it come to us? Through Christ, through the Spirit. So, although I would agree with the Watchtower that the New Testament is not explicitly Trinitarian, I would say this chapter goes a long way towards it.
Yeah. So I think verse 11 struck me as having important points in it for a witness, because how do you explain, and I don't remember ever having to explain this, when it talks about a man having a spirit within him, and it's that is giving you the true man, like his true thoughts.
That's right.
His true thinking. Well, if you don't, how does that work? You know, we think in terms of, whenever we hear God's Spirit, we think energy, force.
Yeah.
We don't think personal. Okay, so now if you apply that to a spirit, a man's spirit, is that your force? Is that your energy? Or is it your conscious thoughts, your comprehension of truth?
The word know is used in here, of both the spirit of man and the Spirit of God.
Yeah, 10 says God reveals through his Spirit. Searches.
So the verbs are so important in here. By the way, the word spirit is 7 times in this one chapter. And what are the verbs that are attached to the Spirit in this one chapter? Revealed. God is revealed to us through his Spirit. The Spirit searches everything, even the depths of God. For who knows a person's thoughts except the spirit of that person which is in him? The Spirit, no one comprehends the thoughts of God except the Spirit. Yeah. So the Spirit is not only conscious and sentient, like anything that has nerves on earth is sentient, obviously.
Yeah. There says knows, so know.
But we're beyond sentience. We're beyond consciousness here. We're into knowledge and comprehension. Yeah. And the Spirit is that which comprehends for man and for God. So then, is the Spirit personal? There's one more verb that's used too, isn't it? Taught.
13, you're
in verse
taught
13.
by the Spirit.
We're taught by the Spirit. Well, these are all personal verbs. So if you get anthropology wrong, that is, if you don't know that you have a personal spirit that is capable of comprehending God, although it can't reason its way to God, but it's capable of comprehending his revelation. If you don't know that, then you'll never understand God and his nature.
I think the Watchtower's teaching makes you think that man is simply breathing flesh. Yeah. And that your memories are what make you personal, but nothing about your comprehension, your spirit.
So where does thought reside? Well, you think it resides in your physical brain, But that's obviously not the anthropology, the
Yeah.
doctrine of man in the New Testament. It's not Paul's idea.
Yeah, we had a Christian friend who said if you don't get your anthropology of man right, you're not likely to get theology of God or the doctrine of God right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think there's one more point we should lean on a little heavier, which is verse 8. If they had understood, that is the truth of the cross, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory.
Mm-hmm.
So it's obviously the point here, the contrast between the humiliation of the cross and the glory of the person that's on that cross.
Yeah.
And the glorious Lord is about as high as and elevated as a designation of who Christ is that is possible to give.
Now our picture of Jesus is he's just a perfect man. So would they, if they knew he was a perfect man, I mean, a lot of them said he was without sin. That didn't seem to stop
and
them.
they still put him to death.
It didn't matter to them. So here, it's if they'd known, it would have stopped them if they'd really known who he is.
The Lord of glory. Now, what does that connect Jesus Christ with? Well, the tabernacle, right? So it's no accident that John in chapter 1, the Gospel of John says that he tabernacled, the Logos, tabernacled among us. So he's connecting to the thought that the literal glory of God, the Shekinah, was in the tabernacle and, of course, also in the temple. And now that glory of God is in Jesus Christ. We've got a couple of quotes. Here's Godet on this passage, and I think this is very valuable. If I can read it.
If you can't, I'll read it, I guess.
Godet says, to make intelligible to his readers this inward activity of the divine spirit, the apostle invites them to contemplate the working of man's spirit in man himself. For man is made in the image of God, and that precisely in virtue of his spiritual nature. There is in every man a life hidden from all eyes, a world of impressions, anxieties, aspirations, and struggles, of which he alone, insofar as he is a spirit, that is to say, a conscious and personal being, gives account to himself. This inner world is unknown to others except insofar as he reveals it to them by speech. Such is the likeness of what passes in the phenomenon of revelation between God and man.
Yeah, that was very good.
And now Leon Morris?
Yeah, Leon Morris has this comment. Nobody can really know what is going on inside a man. Nobody except the man's own spirit. From outside, other men can but guess. But the spirit of the man does not guess. He knows. In the same way, reasons Paul, no one outside God can know what takes place within God. Nobody can know but the Spirit of God himself. That is to say, the Spirit knows God from the inside. There can be no question but that this passage ascribes full deity to the Spirit, and it also implies that the revelation of which Paul has been speaking is authentic, because the Spirit who reveals is truly God. What he reveals is truth of God, is the truth of God.
I can't think of a better chapter than chapter 2 of 1 Corinthians when it comes to the doctrine of the Spirit. If you don't get it from this chapter, you're not going to get it. But that too is revealed by the Spirit, we are told. The truth about God is revealed by the Spirit.
And I think the idea of man being made in the image of God is important here too.
Sure.
Because that's what makes us different than animals, is that we have a likeness that God has. Something that God has, he's given to us to make us image bearers of him.
So they have a degree of consciousness and gifts that we don't have, but we have something none of them have. They have sentience, they have consciousness to some degree, but they don't have a self-image,
awareness,
and a comprehension of their place in the universe, which is unique to man.
And worship.
And worship God in the obvious way that we can. Yeah. So what are our links?
We're going to link the first video of 4 on a document that you wrote on the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, there's a document which you can find on onewonders.org in the PDF archive, a document on the history of the doctrine of the Holy Spirit throughout the Bible, both Old and New Testament, and the early church.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite lengthy. That's why we did 4 shortish videos to give everybody a chance to chew on it. So the first one is on your screen.
Good.
See you